Doktor Ronald Campbell, HRM Possibilities Direktörü ve bugün bizlerle ne konuşacak?
Bugün aslında başlık da tam istediğimiz gibi bir başlık olmuş. Başlık diyor ki, liderler B'ye ihtiyaç duyarken A için yapılan eğitim çılgınlığı ve...
O zaman alkışlarla Doktor Ronald Campbell'ı sahneye davet ediyoruz. May I invite... Welcome. Stage is yours.
My mic on? Can you all hear me? First off, then, let me say thank you. I appreciate you investing your time in the conference. And also would like to say, I've done a number of these, and you're people that organize the event worthy of a round of applause. Truly, you've vetted properly and set the whole conference up very, very nicely. So I want to thank you for that. A little bit where I want to head today, so we've got some precious small time together. So if you'll excuse me, I won't go into a long biographical background to try to establish the credibility. I'll say it as quickly as I can. A little over 30 years in the business. Travel the world, got to work with many very inspiring people. One of those inspiring people that I've had the pleasure of working with, I would actually go so far as to say honor, has been Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. Wonderful contribution to the field. And I retired from the Center for Leadership Studies. It's an international firm. We had affiliates in 32 countries around the world. And that lasted about 2 weeks. And then Marshall got a hold of me and said, I want to take the things that we've learned from doing these intensive executive coaching sessions, and how can we take the lessons from that executive coaching and bring it into the classroom, build a bridge between the coaching that we want to be doing and the skills that are necessary in our organizational settings. That was just too tempting, so I jumped in and said, sign me up, I want to be part of that. And very happy to share some of those learnings and things that we have found working here in about the last year and a half with some wonderful research from a variety of organizations around the world. And I do think that that's going to make a little bit of a difference as we're talking about learning again and learning anew. You're on the right track. That should become more than just a motto. It really ought to become kind of our doctrine as we're in training. So let me move right ahead here and see if mine floats. I want to talk about this morning, and I hope I get you thinking along these lines as well. I think one of the things that negatively impacts, let's say, the training and the things that we have people do afterwards, and even in our day-to-day coaching from an executive or management level, is that we train for A. Now, on the management side, we can say we hope for A, but yet what we're doing is getting a little off track. Meaning, if I set up and pulled you into the office and told you that I really was looking at a position that I would love you to take on, and I put you into that position, very likely that I'm going to be finding out, I'm giving you feedback and encouragement on things other than what we sold you in terms of what we wanted you to do. So we're going to play with that just a little bit here. And in order to do this, and because I want to get some things done very rapidly, and the best way to do that is in smaller groups. So, and I know it's going to be difficult a little bit with the configuration in the room, but first thing I want you to try to do is to some people that you can have eye, ear, and noise contact with, just form some small groups, 5 or 6 people. And if you could do that just by the eye contact now, just form up, because I'm going to be asking you for some information here in a minute. So in small groups, everybody got, are you all collect? You don't have to because you're up front and you're not going to see them. Are you all ready? Everybody set? Okay. Now, if you would, make sure you can all see each other for just a second. Make eye contact. You're a good-looking bunch. This should be fun. You're looking at each other? Good. Now, what you're going to do, eye contact and free your right hand, meaning make sure your right hand is free. On a count of 3, I want you to point to somebody in your group. 1, 2, 3, point. Who's getting pointed at the most? Raise your hand. Who got pointed at the most in your group? All right, you're the team leader. That's our very sophisticated process for selection. 1, 2, 3, point. So now that we all have, now remember, as team leader, you don't have to necessarily do the work. You could delegate that to someone in your group. That's perfectly fair to do. So now we're going to play with this for a second. And here's some of the information that I wanted to bring with you. And I want you to kind of just think for a second. If I told you that we have someone who's now, this has changed. Last night, I got the email. He was rated #1. So we're not just top 5. And fortunately, Marshall is not very ego-driven. So being #1 will not change him too much. I feel very fortunate on that. 15 most influential thinkers, $1 million seller, and that's $1 million on each of the 3 books that he's done. He's a faculty member, executive coach around the world, member of the Drucker, on and on and on. And if I said to you that would you like the benefit of what this man has been learning and what he's been discovering, I would hope, as people in the training or people development mode, that you'd like to give him a few minutes just to hear what he's got to say. Many folks have benefited greatly from the work that he's done. So that's what we're going to pull in. Now, how we're going to pull it in? Let's go real fast. Organizational setting. Nothing too sophisticated here. Typical chain of command. Everybody with me on this? Quick question for you. As we're breaking this thing down, we have 2 elements that every act on the leader's part is judged by. 1, the success, in varying degrees from high to low. The second, and less talked about, although starting to get some play, is on the engagement side. What are we doing to make people feel like we want them a part of what we're trying to do? So we're trying to get it accomplished and have a healthy work attitude at the same time. The challenge here is that it is indeed simultaneous, that I can't impact on just the success and then come back 3 hours later and say something nice to hope that I get you engaged. Every action on our part has that kind of a profound impact as we're influencing others. So we hit on both scales. And we go into organizations and we ask the leaders and managers what they get feedback on. They will tell us they have conversations pretty frequently on the success side, not so much on the engagement side. So if I went in to talk with my boss about someone that worked with me that is now just learning and excited and happy to be here, and I have a wonderful developmental opportunity, and I want to talk to them about how this will benefit this individual, how they will be more engaged, how they'll be more excited, how we can make work a little more fun, I'm not likely to have a long conversation with my boss. If I go in to talk about the success items, I'm likely to get more time from him or her. So we're very fluent on the success side, not quite yet on the engaged. I want to take a look at this thing, and we're going to play for just a minute and say, what are the skill sets and things that are necessary for me to be both successful and engaged? That's the little rethinking we want to put out there. Both elements. I want both scales, and I want to get them high. Now, with that comes this question on it. If I'm the leader, and I want to be both successful and I want to be both engaged, how do I spend my influence time? Got precious little time. How do I spend it? We look at it in 2 major groupings, and this is what our clients tell us that they have to be working with. On the 2 major groupings that we're going to be discussing with this thing, I have a couple bit where I have a sit-down, planned, focused agenda that's fairly uninterrupted. Now, when we're in training or HR or coaching, that's likely to happen fairly frequently. So, switch your hats. Be the leader, be the managers in your organization for just a moment, because their work is going to look a little bit different than yours from this regard. So, with your managers, do they have the focused, sit-down, uninterrupted conversation, or do they spend most of their influence time with what I'm going to call drive-by leadership? meaning they wanted to get a cup of coffee, and it's, oh, Ron, glad to see, we got to, fast, fast, fast. We move the ball a little bit. And then, so, for you, how many of you identify with the A? With your managers? I have plans, sit down uninterrupted. Or how many of you have that fast, rapid pace, quick in-the-moment leadership that you do, that you try to help influence? Which one do you do more of? Do your managers do more of? Plans, sit down? Raise a hand. How many of them do much more on that moment-to-moment, walking down the hallway, question pops up? Well, I had some help. I asked for a quick survey to be done here in Istanbul, and I was amazed. Numbers that we normally get, and we've got a little over 40,000 inputs on this, and the averages around the world are around 76% in the drive-by. That's how they spend their time. I've got to get good at hearing you, get the key element, read where you're at, and then give you the assistance that you need as we're talking. That if I'm not equipped to do those kinds of things, that I'm going to have a little bit of trouble influencing the outcomes. Your numbers came out, and I really wanted to challenge you on that. Was it really 80-20? I mean, Plato has talked about a lot, and there's a lot of 80-20. Your numbers fall in there. So it tells us a lot. What that means is I'm selecting the different kinds of trainings, even the kinds of coaching that I'm going to be doing with my people. I have to make sure I put a tool in their hand that serves them where they influence most. Fast and on the run. They don't want, don't need, won't use my 29 easy steps to problem solving. No value. No value. So using this as sort of a filter of how do they literally work and influence to select those tools that I'm going to be putting in front of them. And we want to play with that just a tiny bit more. We benefited greatly from some research that was done at Harvard, where they took a look at, by these levels of the organization, executive, management, supervisory, non-supervisory, and then said, what makes them successful and effective? Let's sit down and talk with them, talk with the people around them, and see what we discover. What best contributes to success and effectiveness. Kind of surprising numbers here. Most of these items that we're going to be talking about fell into three major groupings. These three groupings being human skills, conceptual, and technical. All of us display and use all three skill sets in our jobs. Depending on where you are in the organization, that varies. So let's play for just a second on this. Technical skills, whatever it would be in your organization. So if I'm dealing with a hospital type setting, the technical skills are pretty obvious of what I went there for. And that's going to be, how good those are contributes greatly to the success and the effectiveness on that. If I'm dealing in a high-tech company, it can change and modify just a little bit. Conceptual, big picture, long-term, down the road. What do I need? What does my company need? What does our organization need in terms of talents and skills 2-3 years down the road? How will certain laws impact the way that we do business? What's our competition doing? All of that kind of thing goes into the big picture conceptual. What we found, and this shouldn't surprise anybody in this room, in fact, you could probably give me some data, was that human skills were huge. They were very strong contributors to the success and the effectiveness and the outcome. Now, human skills, let's talk a little bit about what that means. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to put you through the activities in our small groups here, and I'm just going to share with you some of the information that came out. Human skills, certainly being able to set goals with people that are clear and concise. They know what's expected of them. That's a huge one. Another one that came on, we could generalize and say communications. There was one in particular, though, that seemed to rise above all the others, and we were a little surprised at first. So was Katz at Harvard. And that was, in the human skills section, and I hope this translates well, do you walk what you talk? Is there truth in your behavior? Does it align with your espoused theory? I want to make sure we've got this, and this is a little bit different or difficult to do on the interpretation, so please work with me here on this. For the sake of this activity, hands up. Everybody, hands up. I can tell when the translation's done by all the movement there, so I'm focusing. Identify your right hand. You're in a fairly safe neighborhood, so probably no one else will ask you to do this, but the hands up, right hand. Taking your right hand now, please, and place it on your chin. On your chin. Your chin. Your chin. Do you do as I say or do as I do? Just saying. So if the boss says, I want you involved, I want the benefit of all your wonderful expertise, all this background that you've got, and the first time you give a suggestion is, that's stupid. Now, some of you are trainable, I will say that. Because as I said, put your hand on your chin. When I yelled it out like for the third time, you mangled your face to put your hand down there. Some of you did this right away. You followed instruction. You looked at me. You looked around, saw everybody else doing this. And then that's the power, and I love that little activity. Do you walk what you talk? It's magic. It's magic. So that's part of the focus that we want on here. For the people that love to see these numbers crunched, I'm just going to pop them up real fast on this. I hope I'm popping them up real fast. What contributes to my success and effectiveness? On the technical skill side, when I'm frontline, it's huge. When I'm at the very top of the organization, it contributes a lot less to my success and my effectiveness with people. That's not the primary thing if I am in any senior role. Technical competence, everything. Let's look at conceptual. Conceptual, if I'm front line, I do not want all of your details from that strategic planning trip that you and the executives took to London. It doesn't help me in my day-to-day activities much. So I don't need a lot of the details there. And in non-supervisory is, how does what I do contribute? How do I make myself promotable? Feeling like I'm growing, feeling like I'm mastering my job. I think that's important there. And what does this organization do? Can I have some pride in the place that I work at? Or when someone meets me at a cocktail party and they say, who do you work for? And I say, but I'm looking for another job. Am I not proud of where I work and what I do? And that's becoming much more important, particularly to the millennials. If they don't feel like there's a social soul behind their organization, then I haven't really joined the right company. I got a job. I got a job. And I might be happy with that. Let's move it further then. And take a look at this big one on the human skills. I hope I'm making it very clear that what we're talking about, for many of our people, there's a 0 point of expertise in terms of the technical thing that they certainly should have in order to qualify to have the position. Now we've got to move past that a little bit and say, how do we find those folks that excel? And cleaning up some of the human skills, great investment. I don't know if you've seen some of the research on the outcomes from engagement. I don't think it's any coincidence that 13 of the top 15 companies in the world have the highest numbers on the engagement measurements that we do through Gallup. So that engagement thing, developing the human skills, makes profit. It's not just a nice thing. It's what makes us profitable and positions ourselves for the future. Now, we've got two things that are going on I want to hit very quickly on it. Many of the leaders in organizations are challenged with this wonderful little dynamic of when is it I'm working on the day-to-day business that is transactional, and when are we trying to accomplish something bigger and better, which would take us up to this transformational? We do know this. Leaders of the future are going to have those skill sets that are more transformational. Doesn't mean that transactional goes away, but transformational is going to become a bigger determinant of the truly successful. A bigger determinant. What does that look like? Well, you're going to hate me, because some of them is kind of vague, meaning, what do I do? How do I do that? Collaboration. Absolutely the wave of the future. It's not going to be win as much as I can for me and my group. That will be very short-term from our success. How well do I collaborate? It's having great questions, not having great answers, that's going to distinguish also the leader of the future. If I can ask you a good probing question that gets you to go back and think or rethink or play with this and explore possibilities, it's going to be much better than if I can tell you, increase that by 2%. Me telling you doesn't bring it out of you so that you own it. So that's going to be a huge one. Greater good, bigger picture. Again, not building little empires. I don't know how much you see that one, but sometimes we find them where there's a work group that feels like their main job is to make sure the rest of the organization can't penetrate them. It's almost like building their own little kingdom thing. A big one, build the plane while you fly. Now, I understand there's some interpretation that's going to be hard to do that one, but we've gotten better, and we're going to need to continue to get better on being able to construct and build things as they happen and make the adjustments as they need to be and as they occur. So that one's going to be big. Strategic thinking is not strategic planning. I won't play. Power of purpose, huge and going to be bigger. Beware. Power of purpose. So I'll share with you a small activity that we do to try to get this point across. And you're welcome to try this for yourself in your organizations. What we did, we take a classroom full of managers, we divide them into 3 groups. And what we did for this one, there was a facility nearby where there were, let's say, underprivileged children, low income, certainly worthy of somebody giving a hand. So creatively we said, let's do this. We're going to have these 3 groups assemble a bicycle. So these bicycles came in the box with all the parts and pieces. And we said, one to each team, here you go, build this bicycle. That's your team building exercise. Your bicycle is going to be judged on, is it stable and put together properly? And aesthetically, we want it to look good. And then we sent these 3 teams off into different rooms. We went into one team only was provided this following information. This afternoon, once you've finished your bicycle, we're going to have some children come in from this facility, and you're going to be able to present the bicycle to the kids. The other 2 teams did not know that. I want you to just imagine this for a second, and then I'll give you the big answer to it. The team that knew they were going to be handing this off to the children, that had that purpose in mind, did a remarkable job on assembling the bicycle. They actually had fun. They literally made up a t-shirt thing, and the bike was decorated, and we had them come into the room last. The other 2 teams had brought their bicycle in, quiet, not very excited. This 3rd team that knew the purpose came in, high fives, laughing, talking with each other, and the other 2 teams looked over at this 3rd team wondering if they had had too much coffee. They just seemed caffeinated. What are they so happy about? We did it with a hospital. We took sets of doctors, and we told them that we were going to assemble a dollhouse for the children's ward. We only told one team. And again, we keep getting this hundreds of times in a row now. If we can embrace that power of purpose, so what is it that we're doing and passing on, the meaning behind what it is, performance excels, sense of ownership excels. And for many of us as leaders, particularly if you've been in the organization for a little while, it's just become ingrained. I mean, we got it. We know that power of that purpose. So sometimes knowing that we need to share that with others, or maybe remind the team once in a while when they get working very, very hard, about that purpose, brings them back in, gets them alive again. So this power of purpose, please keep that one kind of sitting there in the shelf. How can we really harvest that? You've already put in a lot of work to be able to identify it in your organizations. Harvest it. Get it out there, particularly with new people. Let them know that. Remind them of it so they can embrace it and become part of the family. And the walk what you talk, hand on the chin. I don't think you'll forget that one on it. I hope not for a while. It's going to be huge on the future. So, with all of the great intent and looking at these human skills, we're finding that for some of this, it isn't always a matter of training. Sometimes we hit these speed bumps in our day-to-day, and just imagine, I watched a couple of cars this morning, you got them here too, like around the world. You zoom it along and boom, 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 one of those. We hit a little bumpy spot in the road. I want to talk about the bumpy spot. And I'm going to rely on somebody that I hope you're a bit familiar with. If not, please do. A gentleman by the name of Peter Drucker. How many have heard of Peter Drucker before? Yeah, he was the guru's guru. In fact, when I worked with Dr. Hersey, he knew Peter very well. Marshall knows him well, and they called him the Godfather because he was very impressive. Brilliant man, brilliant man. I don't think I need to go into his credentials. But this was one very, very powerful quote that he mentioned that inspired a whole book. I know after certain kinds of trainings and things that I went through, tried to acquire some skill sets, I did pretty good with the skill sets. If anything bothered the outcome, hindered the outcome, it was stupid things that I said or did. Small, but costly. And sometimes, and there's an old expression of shooting yourself in the foot, that I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy with a couple little irritating habits. And that's what I want to focus you in on. So it really isn't trying to get somebody to learn this whole new skill set. You can make an amazing change by finding something stupid that you do and stop it. I think that's very eloquent. So that's the challenge. And that's what really Marshall started focusing on. And that is what got you here won't get you there was about. That we need to be making some modifications here. So we've got 20 habits. I'm only going to cover 10 of them with you. I want you to listen to them carefully as I put them out there and see if you can see yourself in it. If you can't see yourself, think of your spouse. We can always see their bad habits a little more clearly than they can. I've been married a long, long time, and I know my wife is more right than I am on these things. I almost wish we had animated this to do them one at a time so you don't get stuck on reading here on this one. Big one, and this is more not self-evident, meaning not the leader that's saying they do this one, but that other people will tell them. They have to win at all cost, even when it doesn't matter. They've still got to win. That's one of mine. Right fighter. It doesn't matter if me being right about this and in order for me to be right, I've got to make you wrong. It doesn't matter if it cost me some of our relationship. It doesn't matter if it cost me some productivity. Just some people have to be right. And if they're not, they'll tell you why somebody gave them bad information. And it's really their fault that I'm not right, because I usually am. They can't admit a mistake. Meaning just owning it, just saying, I did that. Oh, well, nobody sent me the other data, and we'll come up with reasons on it. That's very irritating. And it can be just a simple, yeah, I forgot, or I blew it. Something nice, sweet, and simple, and move on. An abundance of certitude. This is similar to some of the other ones, but I'm fairly certain I've got the right way, the right path, the right words, the right ideas, the right. A little bit too much. There's a term, and again, I'm not sure how this one would translate, cocky. And we get that out of the UK, actually. If someone is cocky, and that's when we have that abundance of certitude. Failure to express gratitude. I don't know why that is difficult for some people. I really don't. but that, hey, thank you, I appreciate you doing, and just is like awkward for them. Thanks. We mumble it, take what the gift that they've given. Is anybody in here suffering from too much positive reinforcement? I keep looking and I haven't found them yet. So we don't have, that is not a challenge. I mean, if you're telling somebody thank you or you appreciate someone, it's all the obvious stuff, but very powerful when we do it. Adding too much value. Adding too much, feeling compelled to adding value to everything that's put in front of us. I can recall a very important client of ours. I've worked with him for like 15 years, know him well. We've become good friends. He's sitting in my office. We're having a wonderful conversation, very upbeat. Someone brings in a PowerPoint presentation that they're going to be doing that afternoon. And they asked me if I could take one last look at it with them. So my friend's got his coffee. I have mine. So it was kind of on a break, and I'm flashing through the slides. They did a wonderful job. I mean, it was beautifully done, summed up the main things. They came in to ask me if I had a chance to look at it. I told them yes. And then I can't believe, it's embarrassing to disclose this. I turned around to them after this excellent presentation that they're about to go do, and in front of my friend, and said, if you have 36-point font at the top, the second bullet, the lesser bullet, should be 24. And I looked at him as I'm saying this, and you just watch the energy drain out of them. So that's all you've got, Ron? That's it? No nice, not good job. And when they walked on out, my friend turned around to him and he says, wow. He said, you should take some of your own advice, Ron. That was kind of painful. And I realized how frequently we do that. I had to ask other people, is that really a bad habit of mine? They go, oh yeah, you do it a lot. I really was not aware of that. -1, this is another one that's kind of important to us because it's kind of a little bit of a contradiction. We feel like we're getting pulled. So let me try to do this one for you. I'm going to take you back. Let's go back to grade school, elementary school. You have a math quiz, and if you have children, think of your children on this one. They have a math quiz. It has 20 questions on it. They got 19 out of 20 correct. I'm not sure about your education system. I've only asked a few, and they told me I'm right on this. And I said, what does it have at the top of the paper? Does it have +19 or -1? School systems around the world, a lot of them use the -1. And if you ever have an 8-year-old child that looks up at you when you're telling them you missed one, and they go, how come nobody says anything about +19? Is it a challenge to find fault? Is it challenging to? I don't think so. I think we've been groomed for that. In fact, if you think about it, a lot of times we've even got little things with a picture, and it says, what's wrong with this picture? So with children, we actually grade them on their ability to find fault. And we wonder why that kind of follows us into being adults. The one thing that's wrong. Now, let me contradict myself. If I go to the doctor, I don't want any -1s. If they're operating on me, almost zero tolerance. When I flew over here, 0 tolerance for. So yes, there's some places where you cannot allow the -1. But in the whole scheme of things, when you got +19, if you can't even acknowledge that before you get to -1. I brought this up once in a college class that I was taking, and it was clinical research stuff. And it was a Catholic college, University of San Francisco. The professor, I hate to say this, frankly, was kind of boring. They really did an awful lot on the research side, but not very dynamic in their presentation. And we talked about this, and every night you had a little bit of a quiz that you did on the reading material. And we get the papers back after spending 3 hours talking about the power of positive reinforcement and not getting into -1. And again, please think about this as you're designing some of your learnings and trainings. And still, after spending 3 hours on it, when we got our papers back, In the next session, -0. In red, -0 on top of the page. If I get them all right, I still can't get a +20? We're going to get a -0? Something's wrong with our thinking there. Clinging to and not honoring the past. Now, here's what I'm going to ask you to do very, very quickly. Pick one that you think is a high probability that might be one of your bad habits. I've never met anybody that doesn't have at least 5. A few delusional folks, but their people around them told me what they had. So everybody, pick one of the 10 if you got it. Does anybody not see a habit up here that they can identify with, that they've done? We're all good? Everybody's got one, at least one bad habit? You're honest. This is great. All right. Real quickly, partner up with somebody and tell them which one you chose and give them like 30 seconds worth of why. Why is that one yours? So pair off. Got it? All right. I know this is tough to do, so please yell out or raise a hand on this. How many has winning too much? Anybody for winning too much? I guess I'm not too surprised on that one. Right fighter? You know, 1, 3, 2. Yep. And I'm more of a right fighter with my family for some reason. I have been promoted to grandfather 5 times now, so I've gotten pretty good at at letting go of some of these bad habits. I only bring them out when I'm dealing with adults for some reason. I'm good with kids, not so great with adults. Anybody got a can't admit a mistake? There's something wrong? Okay, good deal on that one. Blame, fault, or guilt. That we cannot move on until we place blame, fault. Who screwed it up? Who messed this up? Who didn't do? Before we say, what do we need to do to make it right? That we get possessed by placing blame, fault, and guilt. All right, so here's the idea. If everybody's got one, and I really do want to make sure, because this next activity is not going to go well if we don't all have one. Does anybody not have one of these? All right, so I hope you have a piece of paper. I want you to jot that down. What is that habit? Because I'm going to get you up and moving here in a moment. What's that bad habit that you got? Everybody there? So here's what we're going to do very, very quickly on it. It's fast activity. There's no absolute right or wrong. What was your bad habit?
Me adding too much value.
Adding too much value. Okay. So you've got adding too much value. I'm going to go with -1 as my bad habit. What I'm going to ask that you do, and again, could be a little awkward, don't fall over seats, but I want to get some ideas on how I can reduce my bad habit. So if I've got this -1 and you have the adding too much value, I'm going to give you 2 suggestions on something that I think could give you a handle on reducing that adding too much value. And I'm going to give you one just off the top of the head. One would be to talk to the person about 2 positives before you add something. Whatever your idea of what you want to add value to, make it a question to them, not a statement. There's just 2 suggestions. So 2 suggestions from you on my -1 might be use the -1 in an after conversation for how something might be improved. Make sure you have a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 positives for every 1 you want to bring up. That's where we're just going to give each other 2 quick ideas. Everybody following the activity? All right. I want this to go fast, and we don't have an awful lot of choice on that one. So we're going to go for just a couple seconds here, give 2 ideas, and then we're going to move on. So real fast, turn to your neighbor, tell them your habit, and ask for 2 suggestions on what you could do to reduce that habit. If you haven't already switched, please do. Work with your other partners. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. How many of you got a suggestion that you literally could go and use? How many received a suggestion that you could go and use to reduce your the amount of time you're spending on a bad habit? Yes, no? You needed a better partner then. The idea here behind the feed forward as opposed to feedback, one, it's focused on the future. It's a suggestion. It's an idea. It's not direction. The more that we can exchange some thoughts and things with each other in terms of making some improvements, making the work easier, better, that if we can get this habit of free-flowing suggestions on the improvement and not make it such an official thing. It's almost like if you've ever played any kind of sports, been part of any kind of a team or group effort that was very cohesive, you probably had this dynamic. What I'm suggesting to you is that's another one of those things that works well with our hobbies and our off times that we need to migrate to work. Just a wonderful casualness on suggestions on how we can make some improvements on. So very quickly on this, if I can get you to kind of walk through a fast summary with me, I'm going to come right up to the very top again. That in order for this stuff to work for us, we've got to be mindful that we're making those choices. How do we select those things, those skill sets that we want to work on? Do they actually represent how the person spends their time? The answer to that oftentimes is not. And the feedback, again, from participants from some of these sessions is very, very loud. There is a little 80-20 function going here. Part of our job, I think, as we're assessing and making those decisions, those skill sets that we want for the future, the believability factor behind it has to be there. Meaning if folks don't think that we're talking about their world on it, then they attend class. They don't participate in the leadership workshop. And I think sometimes as leaders, particularly as we're bringing something into our folks on it, that we a little bit overlook the profound impact that some of our decisions have on many other people. And it's sort of like walking around this morning and listening to some of you and hearing those conversations as you're making introductions about one of the best leaders that I've ever seen, one of the best managers I've ever seen. This person is fantastic at. That's a little bit more in line with the verbiage that we want to start happening. Is know that you make a gigantic difference in other people's lives, whether it's because of the position that you're holding or just simply your interest in them. And I think sometimes we get kind of going along on the day-to-day stuff of the job. And if I ask you to think back about a leader that you have or had that was very effective, I would wager money that you're going to come up with something that is wrapped around their human skills. That's what made them profoundly different and distinguished. So if I would leave you with the wish is that you keep yourself reminded of that we do make a huge difference in the folks that are around us. And I know you can take that seriously, but coming from the heart, speaking from the heart, it is much more effective than any hard skill that I could set into your hands. And that's kind of the challenge for the future. As we get more technically separated, how do we bring the human element to life? The only way you do is make sure it's relevant to the work that they do. So with that one, I believe I went 2 minutes over. Time up. Very sorry, and I want to thank you all very much for your participation. We handled the awkwardness well.